Hi, everybody. Good morning. Jay, do you want to introduce yourself? I think it's always interesting to hear people's backgrounds, their trajectory, how you ultimately ended up at PetCo. We had a nice chat about similar paths from an agency experience, but I'd love for you to share that with the group.
Sure. Hello, everybody. It's good to be here. Um, all right, yeah. So my background, I started on the agency side, and then made my way over the client side about halfway through my career. So really since 2007, and I really started to get excited about this digital transformation that was happening kind of at the turn of the century. And so I ended up really finding a niche kind of doing digital and data transformation for big traditional companies. So I was doing that at Unilever, and then ended up going over to Samsung and kind of going through that same sort of journey with them. But really what I was searching for, I think, along this whole journey was getting really close to the consumer and figuring out how to have a relationship and own that end consumer. As we start to get more into this world of digital plus data, what I found at PetCo, as a company that owns their own POS and has 30 million PALS members, and great first party data. As a media person, I think the last place that you want to be pigeonholed inside a company is viewed as a cost center. And having that data and having the ability to architect it for business-based outcomes, allows you to kind of go into a boardroom with confidence to understand exactly what is happening with that investment, based on whatever outcome that business wants. And I think that's really, without fully understanding, kind of in the moment where I was gravitating towards. I think that's what ultimately brought me to Petco was, kind of the culture, plus the fact that they just have this unbelievable data-driven mindset, and that's what I've been doing for the past few years there.
Thank you. Speaking of the past few years, certainly consumer behavior and trends have certainly changed. We're working from home, we're doing distance learning, and I think, and we shared this, a lot of families have acquired new pets. And so I'd love for you to share, how that ultimately has, impacted your business and sort of what you've seen as a result of just this shift in consumer behavior.
Yeah, it is weird to think that we were a pandemic beneficiary. But I mean, there was, over 10 million animals adopted in 2020 and almost the same in 2021. Again, I think it's really interesting to see. We talk about, kind of pets being all about unconditional love and who doesn't want to market unconditional love. And we saw that kind of just play out, during the pandemic of people's needs for pets and companionship. So what we saw at the beginning of the pandemic, there was a scary period for us as a business that was at the time still probably 95% brick and mortar. We kind of almost went to zero for a few weeks, and that was pretty scary. But we rebounded very quickly. I mean, I was working really closely with my teams, and we were trying to understand where the trends were happening and where consumer demand was. And when you have pets, I mean, obviously you still need to feed them, and they still need care and training and grooming. And all of that, I think, was still a need. So what we realized is that, one, the demand was starting to shift to online. And I was brought to Petco to help stimulate the .com business and really turn Petco into an omni-channel retailer. And while a lot of companies were cutting back on their investments, I was really understanding where the trends in consumer demand was, and we leaned all into .com for that. Really for kind of March and April, we kind of shifted all of our media. Went all in on figuring out how to capture all of that inborn consumer demand in digital, while at the same time figuring out how to stand up our curbside pickup, which we did in about 2 weeks. So it was pretty fascinating just to see how consumer demand was changing in the moment. And then, really it's been shifting, over the course of the last 2 years. And even today, as gas prices fluctuate, I mean, we're seeing kind of that demand between kind of in-store and online change in real time. And so it's just being agile enough to flex.
So, as a result of that, describe to the group ultimately like, how's that impacted your media mix? What channels have you leaned into, or are you going to continue to lean into? And then talk a little bit about innovation in the space.
Yeah, you know, I kind of joke that I've spent kind of the majority of my career convincing traditional companies to add digital to their mix, and I had to convince Petco to add television and video to their mix. It was very much kind of a performance-based culture, and that performance-based culture, meant something very narrow, I think, in their mind of kind of search and shopping and retargeting. And that certainly is kind of the core and kind of the base for our media mix. But ultimately we look at the kind of what drives the flywheel, and we have a lot of data points that we triangulate, whether it's kind of looking at kind of long-term trends through MMM, through just real-time console data. But ultimately what we found is that the way to build our flywheel is you need equal parts demand creation and demand fulfillment. You have to have both. And for us, that means that while we may be more digitally focused, it's not just lower funnel. We really think about video and a lot of what's going on in your world, as a way to stimulate demand, but also be very targeted. And what we call kind of just surgical, whether that's kind of going after new users or reacquiring certain users, or just driving certain velocity around our high value consumers. And so, we tend to lean a little bit more into digital just because we have amazing first party data. We can create closed loop attribution and really be focused on that business based outcome, which is still a little tougher in sort of that traditional television sense, but it doesn't mean that we don't do it. We still think that there's value in that equal parts demand creation and demand fulfillment.
Great. And then just share with the group. We talked about sort of emerging trends, whether that's how to incorporate TikTok into your overall media execution. And I think you've had some success with live social commerce. I'd love for you to share. I thought it was just really interesting when we connected first.
Yeah. So, I think just in that trend of, kind of demand creation, demand fulfillment, I mean, this idea of just, kind of a shrinking funnel, if you will. And, how do you start to just take steps out of that equation for people? Um, the first insight just came from, research that we were doing. And we realized that kind of discovery in our category was happening in social, especially when it comes to some of our lines. Like we have a brand called Ready and Yuli, which is kind of urban and urbane pet clothing. We have like $100 bomber jackets for dogs, and a boutique down in Soho if you guys want to come and visit. And so, what we realized is that, all that discovery was happening in social. The other data point that we had was that we needed true brand differentiation. There is a sea of sameness in our category. We were doing some consumer intercept studies about 5 years ago. We were kind of doing shop alongs with consumers. And so, we'd do the shop along and we'd walk with them on their way to the car. And we just asked them a simple question: where'd you just shop? And only 50% got it right, which was scary. And that kind of just speaks to what can be seen as kind of the commoditization of the category. And so it's really important for us to drive the brand, and drive the brand as a way to accelerate the business. It's not separate. Sometimes people talk about kind of brand building and performance marketing as separate entities, but the two work together. And that's where we thought that kind of live social commerce could play a really interesting role of bridging those two worlds for us. And we took kind of three swings at it last year, and tried to stay very true to who we are as a business. We're a pet health and wellness company. We have a foundation called PetCo Love. And so, we thought that, why don't we try and do a doggy fashion show? That is actually something that, could be pretty cool for, from an entertainment experience for consumers, but also very true to who we are. And our only KPI, we worked with a shelter in LA. Our only KPI was to get the 7 dogs that were going down the runway adopted. That was a success for us, and just use it as a learning for us. And so we featured kind of those clothing brands, Ready and Yuli, had 7 dogs kind of go down the runway. We did a 30-minute kind of live show with Ariel Vandenberg, who also is just a lover of animals and a really great host. And um, and what we realized is that not only did we kind of sell out of our gear, but we started to do some really interesting brand studies through Ipsos, and we realized that it was an amazing way to start to drive our brand credentials. It's 30 minutes of amazing, deep, engaging brand storytelling, while at the same time we're selling product. Um, that was kind of lesson number one. Lesson number two is that we were left with all this amazing content. We took that content, kind of sliced it up into 30-second to 3-minute pieces of content, and then kept that going for another month. And so we, instead of thinking about it as a 30-minute brand expression, we created kind of almost a 30-day kind of brand event. And it turns out that that creative was more powerful than anything else that we did that year, just in terms of engagement rates and sell through.
That's great. And I'm going to jump ahead a little bit, but I would love for you to share just your approach. We talked a little bit about the balance or success of being data driven and enabling audiences and all of the robust customer data you sit on top of versus being creative driven, because we all can sort of speak to the fact that without strong creative and the creative that you were talking to, that immediate execution can be planned flawlessly, but if the creative doesn't tie in, then you're sort of left empty handed. So I'd love for you to share just how you approach the balance between the two, and where you've seen success.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great point. And as a media person, I am not above, saying that,
Yeah.
it's the creative that is the strong force.
Yeah.
It's the message that goes through the pipes rather than the pipes itself. Because of that, I always joke that I believe in kind of the strong marriage between media and creative, so much so that I married a copywriter. It's near and dear to my heart. And so we actually have an in-house creative team that kind of dot lines into me. And so, I have a creative team, both, for my own social campaigns, but for all of the paid media. And, we spend as much time optimizing the creative message, doing, kind of daily champion challenger messaging, as we do with the channels itself. The two have to be intertwined.
Have you found the benefit of having that team not only in-house, but certainly reporting into you so that there's an overall sort of consolidated strategy toward execution against both?
Yeah, and it all starts with the consumer and the cohorts that we're going after. So, first, we just need to understand, the consumer mindset and what it's going to take to do that desired outcome, whether that is acquiring a new user or reactivating a new user, or trying to cross-sell or upsell. So all of that starts with consumer mindset, which is, again, kind of the message. And when you can understand, kind of what you need to say, and then marry that with the channel that you are going to deliver that through, that's how you get to really, I think, effective messaging that resonates with your consumer.
Great. And for those of you who may be less familiar from a consumer or customer standpoint, certainly PetCo sits in this unique position to have just a wealth of first party data. So you have not only your rewards program, but you have brick and mortar data, you also have e-com data. How do you think about each of those sort of data sets and how you deploy them against each tactic or channel as you're thinking about your overall media strategy?
Well, I mean, I think we try and look at it holistically, and try and triangulate all the different data sources. So you start with, kind of the business objective or marketing objective, kind of overlay that with consumer insights, and then start to take the business, insights that we get from real-time data. So, that's understanding anything from, kind of consumer demand, whether they are wanting to shop a little bit more in store or online, to even thinking about kind of the business units that we have. So whether that is certain consumables and kind of brands of food, and attachment rates. So understanding, if you're buying food, then what are you most likely to buy on top of that. And then even just thinking about certain categories that we flex between, whether it's food or supplies or companion animals. So this is just, an interesting thing. So companion animals like bearded dragons and guinea pigs, we notice in times of inflation, like those are like that business tends to start to slow down first. And so, I know we just had kind of BlackRock on the stage before, but that is a really interesting kind of telltale sign for us, knowing that we're heading into an inflationary period. If you start to see bearded dragons, guinea pig sales soften, and so all of these sorts of data points that we can understand in real time, help us understand where to flex our media dollars and what to promote.
And so PetCo just recently received the American Humane Certified Seal, which is a monumentous honor. How is that going to impact sort of your strategy, and how will you weave that through? And if you want to explain a little bit more about it to the group, I'd love for them to understand and how that will impact sort of strategy moving into the scarily back half of 2022.
Yeah, I mean, we're seeing it play out first in the social space, and for anyone that manages social channels, I mean, there's certainly a lot of voices out there and a lot of loud voices. And unfortunately, in our space, or fortunately, I mean, we have a lot of, passionate people. But sometimes, not all of the information that's out there is true and transparent. And so, we get a lot of comments, and it even happens when we do live social as well, of people believing that we still sell like dogs and cats in store, and have and like PETA gets very involved in those sorts of things. And so we have kind of really loud critics and voices about kind of treatment of pet, which obviously we believe very strongly in. And so this is the ultimate certification and validation of kind of who we are in terms of our ideals and mission of being a pet health and wellness company. I mean, it's the ultimate kind of proof point and reason to believe. And so, when we have these conversations, kind of in public in real time with people that, believe that, we may not be treating animals in the best way. I mean, it's great to have this as a validation.
That's great. As we think about, we talked a bit about measurement, and they discussed it in the last session as well. I know it's a very loaded topic with disparate tools and sources and channels. How do you sort of wrap your arms around that as an organization? And with a similar question, what have you seen to be proven to be successful? Where do you still think are the biggest gaps as it pertains to your business directly?
Yeah, measurement is near and dear to my heart. Again, it kind of goes back to the idea of, you never want to be a cost center. So, being able to show those business-based outcomes are critical for what we do, as a business. And, it's part of the reason why we are, so heavily focused in sort of digital channels right now. We have the ability to create closed loop attribution in near real time. And so, for every dollar I spend, I can understand in near real time, kind of what that delivered in terms of revenue, both online and in store. I can translate that to margin. I can translate that to new customers or reactivated customers or our current customers, and then try and translate that to LTV. And so that's pretty powerful. That I've been kind of chasing this old Wanamaker saying, that we know half of our advertising works, we just don't know what half. I mean, we know now, which is great. I mean, that is a great place for us to be as an industry. With that said, I mean, there's still challenges. I had a pull up with our board this week, just talking about incrementality in real time. I mean, I can show revenue and I can show margin, but sometimes it's tough to really kind of parse out what was marketing driven and what is that sort of base organic business. And when we are managing, as a public company, kind of managing at the end of every quarter and trying to, eke out every last revenue and margin dollar, and I start to make some investments, being able to kind of prove that out in real time is really critical. And I would say that we are 70% of the way there, which is a heck of a lot farther than we've ever been. But there's still challenges, with getting that from all media channels.
What do you see as trends that will impact your business, whether they're business related, culturally related, even you mentioned gas prices. What are you sort of forecasting as things that may, positively or negatively impact your business for the remainder of the year?
Yeah, I would say some of the business headwinds that maybe we're all feeling, but we're probably acutely feeling in retail in general, is supply chain and inflation. And where that
Just those two things.
the little small things, I mean, where that shows up for me, especially with the supply chain, when I am when I'm marketing, kind of within Google Shopping and kind of looking at my SKU list, I need to figure out what to boost and what to bury, based on, kind of real-time inventory levels, and then based on our meet beat scores and pricing compared to our competitors. And so that's changing, 2 or 3 times a day. And so, that is a full-time job, just managing kind of our shopping. With that said, I think, we are also just keeping a really close eye on consumer behavior, whether that is in store, whether that's online, um, and some of the things that they are looking for us. You know, Again, things like training, which was really popular as people bought all of these new puppies,
Right.
is starting to wane a little bit now that they're a little older. But other things are becoming more popular. Kind of mobile grooming is something that people want now that they're going back to work and a little bit more time starved. Kind of same day delivery from online is, and so I think what we're starting to see is, kind of consumer behavior um, changing as kind of their time dynamics have changed.
Are you looking at me now? Okay,
I
yeah.
was
Well, thank you.
intrigued. Yeah, if you wanted to get
Good
in.
move
I saw
there.
you there.
Q&A. Do you have a question? Because you've been great. Like you guys, like somebody up there. Is there nobody closer? Can you project, good sir, up there?
I can.
Yeah.
You can.
Jay, you talked about three sort of live social commerce plays. You spoke about the doggy fashion show. Can you just talk about the other two and what you learned from them?
Yeah. What we realized after the first one, we just did kind of a random one in April, which was the doggy fashion show. What we realized that, we think that we could have made it a little bit bigger if we tapped into some of cultural events that were happening. And so the second one that we did was our version of kind of the PetCo Olympics, during the Summer Olympics. We had Gabby Douglas, which was fantastic. And it was at a time where we really wanted to talk about exercise and play as a form of pet health and wellness. And, just tapping into the Olympics was the best way to do that. And then we did one during the holidays. We kind of just tapped into the holidays and did our version of, kind of like a holiday special. And it was really fun. And so what we realized, like each time they got a little bit bigger, and we capitalized on some of the cultural momentum that was out there. And so we kind of used the power of kind of paid media and organic and earned media together to get real scale. And that the holiday one that we did, I think at one point we had kind of 3 million viewers that were watching. I think it was the second largest kind of live social commerce event in the U.S. at that point.
Hi, I'm Davina. I was curious, you said that you're lacking some data in your kind of environment to be able to tell the incrementality story. Can you disclose a little bit more, share a little bit more of like what you're missing?
Yeah, sometimes it's just hard to get it in real time. So, we use tools like MMM, which we have a backwards looking model to understand media incrementality. And we can get that, kind of by channel, which is helpful. But in the moment, like a real thing that I think most retailers face is just footfall. And, kind of part of my job is to make sure that I'm driving, kind of incremental footfall into stores. And it's still tough to measure that in real time. I mean, we use tools or we use kind of tactics like Google Local or Facebook DAR or other type of display to do that. And I can use console data to understand traffic and transactions, but it's tough to kind of parse out kind of what was really driven specifically by media and then what was kind of just organic built into that.
Hey, Jay. Dave Edwards from R3 here.
Hey.
How are you? Hey, you spent over 4 years at Samsung, which is where we met, and maybe you could tell us some of the biggest sort of challenges or differences for you going from Samsung to the retail space.
Yeah. Funny enough, I mean, I think there's actually a lot of similarities. I mean, I think both are considered challenger brands. With that said, the purchase cycles are much different. And so, the purchase cycles are different. And because of that, I think kind of the consumer behavior of how they research and shop PetCo is much different than how they shop Samsung. And so because of that, we have a different offense that we run. And so, in both instances, and I think just in marketing in general, like saliency is still really key. The brand has to remain top of mind, but the way that we can do that with PetCo, may be a little different. I don't need, kind of $300 million a television to keep the brand salient. There's kind of just an inborn TAM that is already fairly engaged. But I think kind of the toughest thing that we need to convince consumers to do, because it is a big and growing category, kind of everybody's in it. And so, you can go to your grocery store, and get, maybe not all of the stuff, but, some of the stuff, at least like some of the food. And so convincing consumers to make that extra stop, to go to a pet store, or, to think of us as a digital first company that has the same sort of service and the same selection, depth, and breadth as an Amazon or a Chewy is part of what I need to continue to raise awareness and educate consumers on.
Hi. I just had two questions. One was earlier in the BlackRock presentation, they talked about out of home. Have you guys started to test that? And then my second question was, what happened to the KPI with the dog show? Did they all get adopted?
They did. They
Oh,
did.
good.
They all got adopted. So 100% success. And, that was, I'll just start there because that was also just a big insight for us is that, we have a PetCo foundation. It's called PetCo Love, and that is near and dear to our heart. And so, part of that formula for us is, making sure that we kind of show up and are cause-based. And so, we're always trying to figure out how we can donate to a cause or get pets adopted as part of everything that we do. Um, you know, Sorry, what was the first part of the question? Oh, out of home, out of home. And so, yes, out of home, just to kind of merge both questions, I mean, out of home was a big channel that we leveraged for Samsung. And it's something that I really believe in. PetCo is essentially 1,500 local stores. It's a hyper-local business. And so, we kind of approach it a little bit like political advertising. I mean, we look at it down to a zip and understand, kind of real-time sales data at a zip level. And so out of home and digital out of home is a great way to keep that brand salient, at a hyper-local level. And, we also are spending a good amount of time and energy as a company investing into upgrading the experience in our stores. So we really believe in the idea of service. And so, kind of all of our stores moving forward will have grooming and training and vets and, and VetCo, which is vaccinations. And because of that, we are acquiring kind of new vets, and we're doing a lot of grand openings. And so, as we are trying to create real momentum with a new, store opening, out of home also is a great way to do that.
By the way, it's 2 mentions of out of home, just for the record. I've made a prediction. It's coming true because you guys keep saying it now. So when will you guys become a retail media network?
I heard that, kind of with the Best Buy team. So we currently outsource. We use a company called Citrus, which I'm sure most people know here. And it's a big part of what we do. And so my budget is comprised of, kind of PetCo dollars and what we call kind of VIP dollars, which is our CPG partners dollars. And, what started as, kind of what would be called probably classical sort of co-op marketing, where we would, kind of take dollars together and, and go into the marketplace and advertise. We are starting to build our own kind of on-site network, which is both, kind of online, CRM, email, and in store, and soon to be experiences. And so, what we are also thinking about, kind of creating a retail network that can include things like these live social commerce events that we, and platforms that we are creating. And so, it's something that we are spending a lot of time talking with our partners on. Today it's through Citrus. Maybe it's something that we take where we go deeper in ourselves. But it's definitely a core part of what we do.
Awesome. Dog or cat or bird? You can throw a third one in if you want to.
I have a Havapoo. I have, you know, I have 2 little girls. It's definitely an on-brand dog for me, and it's the best thing that happened to us.
Perfect. Awesome. All right. Well, thank you guys. Very insightful. Good topic.
Thanks,
Give it a clap.